Okay, welcome to the deep dive. So you, the dedicated learner, you've sent us a whole stack of sources. We've got research, leadership memos, industry predictions, all because you want that shortcut. You want to be well informed about the future of work. And the big question is, how do you build a team and then keep that team competitive in, say, 2026 and beyond?
Right. And it's a huge question right now.
It is. I mean, we've all been just inundated with headlines, obsessing over automation, Gen AI, and whether robots are coming for our jobs. But here's where your material gets really interesting. It seems the smartest leaders, they're not just fixated on the tech itself.
No, they're looking somewhere else entirely.
Exactly. They're laser focused on the human skills, the things that actually underpin success no matter what software update rolls out next.
Okay, let's unpack this. What skills are really going to matter when the technical change is accelerating, almost daily?
The 30-second summary from all these sources, it really isn't about coding languages or some niche certification.
Not at all.
It's this idea that we need to stop looking for these hyper-specialized technical experts and instead start finding team players who can communicate, who are, deeply adaptable and have that high learning agility.
So this deep dive is basically the roadmap for that, for spotting and then developing those foundational future-proof skills.
Yeah, and if you kind of synthesize the core argument here, the whole idea of a competitive advantage is shifting.
How so?
Well, it used to be held by the company with the most specialized knowledge, but now
it really belongs to the company that can learn the fastest.
Learn the fastest, okay.
And that speed, that agility, it relies completely on human skills, things that, no machine can replicate. We're talking critical
thinking and things that are ambiguous, complex, communication, creativity. So our mission today is not just about how do I hire better in 2026. It's more about building a team culture, starting today, that actively prioritizes growth and resilience over demanding, immediate new perfection.
Which brings us right to the first big shift the sources highlight. This idea of hiring beyond niche expertise. And the critique of how we're hiring now is pretty harsh.
It is, yeah.
Leaders spend so much time screening for one hyper-specific technical thing, a certain certification or experience, with one tool that might only be a couple of years old.
And it feels safe, right? It's checkbox.
But the source material, it warns that screening only for that is a fail, a total fail.
Because it's so short-sighted.
Exactly. Think about it. That specific skill could very well be obsolete by the time Q4 rolls around. Or, and this is the critical part,
it could be automated by some new low-code tool or an AI assistant. So the risk is you hire this brilliant specialist whose entire expertise just vanishes overnight.
It's the difference between investing in a short-term sort of transactional knowledge base versus building long-term organizational value. The technical skills are necessary, yes, but they're increasingly just table stakes.
Table stakes, I like that.
What the sources really emphasize is that problem solving, cross-functional communication, and just pure adaptability, they far outweigh those niche tech skills in the long run.
So if your team has those foundational skills.
Right. If they have the skills to figure out the next challenge, it doesn't really matter if the last one just got rendered irrelevant. They're not tied to a single platform. They're tied to a process of discovery.
Okay, so if the resume, which is, let's be honest, it's a historical document,
if that's less predictive, we're really trying to look past paper qualifications and predict behavioral success.
Yeah.
How do we even do that?
Well, what's fascinating here is that the contrast they draw.
Paper qualifications, your certifications, they tell you what someone knew yesterday, or maybe what they know today, but in a static environment. The sources, though, they really stress that the ability to communicate well, to modulate their style, explain something complex simply, adapt their message, that is much more predictive of their success in the long term.
So it's not what you know, but how you share it.
Exactly. The focus shifts from what someone knows today to how they're going to handle tomorrow's inevitable, unforeseen challenges. And that means you have to completely change the interview.
Which brings us smoothly to part two, the art of asking the right questions. If we accept that a lot of specialized knowledge can be automated, we have to streamline the interview to get that valuable intel on behavior, not just, fact recall.
Yes, exactly.
The key seems to be moving away from those simple hypothetical questions and leaning into really specific behavioral ones, the ones that show how candidates actually navigated a real situation.
Absolutely. The goal
is to get narratives. You want to see the mental map they draw when they're navigating complexity. And the sources give three really excellent, specific questions.
Okay, let's run through them. The first one tests adaptability, which is the cornerstone of all of this. Tell me about a time you had to pivot when your original plan wasn't working.
And that question is so critical. It immediately forces them to acknowledge a failure or a miscalculation.
Yeah.
A candidate who struggles with that, or who tries to frame every failure as some kind of immediate success. They might not have the self-awareness to adapt when the stakes are high. You want to hear about the moment they realized the error, and then what they did to course correct.
Okay, and the second question is about learning agility, which, again, in a fast-changing world, is paramount. So, what's the most challenging thing you've had to learn recently, and how did you tackle it? This tells you if they see learning as like
A one-time event, I finished the course, I'm done. Or as an ongoing active process. Did they seek out discomfort? Did they ask for help? That tells you so much more than a GPA.
And finally, the third question. This one targets collaboration. Describe a time you had to collaborate with a department that had completely different priorities. It's vital because the ability to translate their specialized knowledge into terms that matter to, say, finance or marketing, that's the soft skill that prevents silos. If a technical expert can't explain why their findings matter to the business, then their findings are basically dead on arrival.
So that's set of 3 questions. That's a powerful foundation. But the sources have this amazing pro tip to streamline the whole thing.
Yes, the job simulation idea.
Right. Instead of 100 generic questions, you focus the whole interview on one single mission-critical scenario.
Make it a simulation. Frame it around one ambiguous but really important situation they might actually face in their first quarter with you.
Maybe a sudden pivot in product strategy or a major system failure.
And the goal isn't for them to get the right answer.
Not at all. They don't have the context yet. The goal is to find out their approach.
How they handle ambiguity, how they process new, difficult information under pressure. It's less about checking their past knowledge and more about simulating the environment of future success. You're interviewing for the next 5 years, not the last 5.
I love that. Interviewing for the next 5 years. It shifts the whole interview from being this hostile knowledge test to more of a collaborative preview of the job.
Exactly.
Okay, so once we've brought that adaptable person in, we hit part 3. Building foundational skills early. The sources really hammer this home. You have to develop these skills right away to get that compounding advantage. But why the rush? Well, because these foundational skills, communication, learning agility, they're notoriously difficult to develop once someone is already struggling.
It's organizational preventative medicine, really.
Yeah.
Think about it. If you wait until a mid-level engineer is failing because they can't
Clearly communicate their findings to the execs. That remediation is costly, it's time-intensive, and honestly, it's often ineffective because by then the employee is already defensive.
Yeah.
The material really stresses that prioritizing early career training and mentorship lets these skills compound over time. They become unconscious competencies. You're building these human skills before the crisis hits.
So we know why we need them early, but what specifically do the sources define as foundational? What's the list?
They boil it down to 4 specific areas, and it's a brilliant definition. It's all centered on human interaction and change. First is communicating across different audiences. That ability to translate complexity. Second, working with people who think differently than you do, embracing cognitive diversity.
Right.
Third, learning how to get good at new things quickly. That's true learning agility. And fourth, making decisions without having all the information, getting comfortable with ambiguity.
That last one is huge.
In a world of endless data, maybe the most valuable skill is knowing when you have enough to act.
Exactly. The key distinction here is this. Technical skills might be what someone does,
But their soft skills tell you how they'll handle it when things go sideways. And that focus is what prepares a team to navigate change, not just perform in the present.
Which, if that's true, it immediately creates a leadership challenge, right?
Yeah.
If leaders don't actively value and reward these skills, the team's just going to ignore them.
Of course.
And this leads us right into part 4. Leadership. Giving permission to be human. Because as the source says, and we all know this, people always watch what you do more than what you say.
The ultimate signal.
It is. And here's where it gets really interesting. If a leader only praises the engineer who delivered the code on time, but never acknowledges the effort that went into, say, helping a colleague, or facilitating that complex meeting that prevented a disaster, those are foundational skills. They're just going to atrophy.
And the sources provide a roadmap for this, for moving beyond that generic praise. A huge part is modeling both vulnerability and confidence. So leaders need to genuinely acknowledge challenges, but then show confidence in the team's process.
And their ability to figure things out.
Right, not just in the expected outcome. That models adaptability. Another thing is involving the team in finding solutions, not just dictating them. When you hit a roadblock, turning to the team and saying, okay, this is complex, how can we approach this differently? You are modeling the very learning agility you want from them.
So it sounds like the key is really changing the recognition structure. Stop rewarding just the results.
Precisely. Recognition has to go way beyond just the person hitting their numbers. You have to actively look for and praise the small gestures that demonstrate these skills.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about recognizing someone for delivering the Q3 report versus recognizing them for delivering the Q3 report using such clear visuals that you finally got sales and operations aligned.
Okay.
The second one praises the clarity, the communication skill. That's the lasting value, not just the technical task.
That totally reframes recognition. It makes it about reinforcing behavior, not just celebrating a number.
And this leads to the source's big critique of the annual review. If you treat communication skills as an afterthought until that one meeting a year, they just won't develop. And by the time you need them in a crisis, it's too late.
And the final piece of this leadership puzzle connects back to that idea. Permission to be human. Leaders don't have to pretend everything is perfect.
No, in fact, they shouldn't.
The sources are very direct. Pretending all is well when something is clearly not is exhausting and it's counterproductive.
That vulnerability is key to building psychological safety. When a leader admits they don't have all the answers, like, hey, we're all facing a steep learning curve on this new tech, they demonstrate that it's okay for the team to be realistic about difficulties. It creates a space for problem solving, not just performance anxiety.
And that permission, it has to flow downwards. It has to create the space for change, which brings us to our last part, part 5, cultivating workforce agility. If the team is allowed to be human, then the leader has to actively allow space for experimentation, for getting outside comfort zones. The research suggests this means encouraging shadowing, trying new ways to collaborate, and this is the big one for a lot of companies, even failing on occasion.
Agility isn't theoretical, it's a practiced skill. You can't just expect people to be adaptable in a crisis if they've never been allowed to adapt in a low-stakes environment. So you have to encourage those, well, what if we tried this? Conversations, where ideas are debated openly no matter who they come from.
And if those experiments don't work out,
Which some won't.
the focus has to immediately be on what can be learned, not who to blame. A blame culture will kill agility instantly.
Precisely. That cycle experimentation, failure, learning, that is the engine of adaptability. And the sources tie it all together with this really powerful synthesis. Workforce agility is the ultimate competitive advantage. But like any true advantage, it requires constant, intentional practice, starting from the top.
That brings us to the end of our deep dive. So we've covered the 4 pillars for future-proofing your team. You hire for adaptability, you use scenario questions, you train foundational skills early, and you lead by example, giving your team permission to be human.
So what does this all mean for you, the learner? I think it means you can't predict exactly what 2026 will throw at you. No one can. But by focusing on these immutable human elements, communication, adaptability, learning, you can absolutely build a team that can navigate its way through any change, no matter how disruptive. That's the real resilience.
And the foundational argument from all this material is that these critical human skills have to be in place before you actually need them.
Before the fire starts.
Exactly.
So the final thought for you to consider is this. Look at your own team today. If a major disruptive technology came out next month and immediately automated, say, 30%
Of the recurring tasks, are you confident they have the communication clarity and the learning agility to pivot effectively?
That's a sobering question.
It is. Or are those skills being treated as an afterthought, something for checkbox on the annual review? The real question is, how can you implement daily, low-stakes systems today that reward curiosity and process improvement rather than waiting for a crisis or just rewarding a number at the end of the year? That daily investment, that is the real future-proofing strategy.